Well, it's the final predictions episode of the 2023-2024 regular NFL season. We've made it to the playoffs. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Podcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Well, I mean, technically we haven't made it to the playoffs yet. That's why we're doing this video. We had to do a whole week first, and that's 16 games. So I guess that was wrong in the whole intro, but it's too late to go back now and change it. Grossi, and today we are going to be predicting all 16 of the final games of the regular season. And oh man, I cannot wait for the playoffs. We got some crazy games on deck, including two insane primetime games on Saturday night and Sunday night. We'll get through it all. Before we get to that, I want to do a recap of last week. I went 11-5, respectable once again, giving me a 162-95 record on the season. Not too shabby. However, there are two individuals who are doing much better than I am, and those are the two leaders tied for the top of the Pick'em League, and that is the King of Australia. I salute you. And we also have ESPN Fan with a record of 178-78. So a big shout out to you both. And let's see who will be the king of the Pick'ems after this week. Starting off with Saturday football, you got an AFC North matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. Both teams coming off a big win. The Steelers, Mike Tomlin, somehow, some way, breathing life into the Steelers to get them over that 500 mark.
Life will not be contained. Life breaks free, it expands to new territories, and it crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously, but, well, there it is.
They will be finishing with a winning record because they defeated the Seattle Seahawks last week, and listen, Mason Rudolph is looking pretty darn good on that team. So much so that Kenny Pickett, regardless of what's happening with him with his injury, Mason Rudolph will get the start on Saturday. Unfortunately, Brad Allen, the referee from that Lions-Cowboys game, will also be getting the start. So apologies in advance. But the Steelers have looked like a much more formidable team these past few weeks. Ever since Mitch Trubisky got sat, Rudolph has made that offense more efficient. And if they get into the postseason, they could be a problem. They're taking on the Baltimore Ravens, who wiped the floor with the Miami Dolphins, clinching the number one seed, clinching the AFC North, and the Ravens are far and away the best looking team in football. Now, this week I would pick the Ravens because it would make sense. They are the better football team. However, the Steelers do have the Ravens number, and more importantly, the Ravens, they got nothing to play for. Like I just said, they clinched that number one seed, and the Steelers, they're still fighting to get into the playoffs. So because the Ravens will be sitting their starters, I actually am going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers to get the win here and get them that much closer to potentially punching their ticket into the playoffs. And if they make it there, oh boy, it's going to be an AFC North extravaganza. Steelers win. Then on Saturday Night Football, we got prime time. You got the Houston Texans taking on the Indianapolis Colts. Last year, this was the Week 18 game, and they were fighting it out to see who was going to get the first pick in the draft. And now they're seeing who's going to go to the playoffs, baby. And both these teams getting a big win last week. The Texans, CJ Stroud is back, and no one is safe. That's a if the NFL was scripted joke. It's a great series, if I don't say so myself. But CJ Stroud is back, and he has just had a phenomenal season, is likely to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, going up against the Colts, who have been one of the surprise stories this season. Because if you had told me at the beginning of the season that the Colts would be fighting for a playoff spot at Week 18, I wouldn't have been too surprised. However, the fact that they've done it without Anthony Richardson, they've been injured all year. Gardner Minshew has been that guy. Jonathan Taylor's back. And right now, the Colts, they're looking pretty darn good. This is going to be a really fun game. The atmosphere in Indianapolis is going to be insane. However, I am going to go with the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud, he's got the poise. The Texans sometimes have the defense. And overall, I think the Texans might be a little bit better than the Indianapolis Colts. And so because of that, I'm going to go with Houston and the Strouds to get the big win. But for Colts fans, there's still hope. Then you got another AFC North matchup between the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Browns, of course, coming away with a big win against the Jets on Thursday Night Football and clearing their path to go into the postseason, so they will be resting their starters this week, taking on the Bengals, who unfortunately lost to the Chiefs last week, ending their playoff hopes as they are eliminated from the postseason. And, we got to give some props to Jake Browning, because he went in there, and most of the times he played pretty darn well and was serviceable at least. And I know this is going to be a disappointing season for the Bengals. There's going to be some changes next year with the wide receiver core, but overall, Bengals, you fought really hard, and I respect the crap out of that, even though you did score 17 in the first half and then got shut out in the second half.
If you just do stuff and nothing happens, what's it all mean? What's the point?
That part wasn't so good. But this game, as I said, the Cleveland Browns will be benching their starters. But then again, I don't really know if they have any starters because everybody's injured on that team. But I am going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals to get the win at home, Week 18. A little bit of a moral and actual victory to end the season. Because the Browns, they ain't playing for anything. They need to rest up. So Bengals, you get the win. But Cleveland, you get the last laugh. Then an NFC North showdown between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. The Vikings getting the crap kicked out of them by the Green Bay mother-loving Packers. And even though their playoff hopes are still alive, I don't think they will after this week because, good God, the Detroit Lions, they're coming into Week 18 and they are pissed. And Dan Campbell, after getting screwed by the refs, must not be too happy, but he's also got to remember that they still won the division.
F it, man. Can't be worried about that shit. Life goes on, man.
And Dan Campbell said that he is coming in with a fury. They are not resting starters, and the Vikings, who are still trying to get into the postseason, I think they're walking into a buzzsaw. Ford Field will be a rockin' before they host a playoff game next week, which is super exciting for Lions fans. And here, I think the Lions, they have a statement to make. The Vikings did not look good on Sunday night against the Packers, and I think the Lions are going to roll them, ending their playoff ambitions. So, Detroit, Blue Kitty's gonna go meow. Then you got the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Tennessee Titans. The Jaguars able to get a win last week, and Beathard did not look too bad. The defense, though, they looked really good, shutting out the Panthers, and they needed to look good because these past few weeks, it's been rough. And Trevor Lawrence, he's hoping to get back on the field.
It was really hurting for a second, and now it just hurts a little bit. And I'm doing great.
That man is Gumby. But legitimately, Trevor Lawrence has gotten the crap beaten out of him all season, and it's been rough. And another season that's been rough has been the Tennessee Titans. They've been up and down. They've had the Will Levis amazing moments like beating the Dolphins, and then they've had moments like last week when they couldn't really get anything done. And the Titans season has definitely been disappointing. However, the Titans could ruin the Jaguars' postseason ambitions, and I think the Titans are going to play them quite hard.
That's what she said.
However, I do have the Jaguars getting the win here, clinching the AFC South, and that is the easiest way that they can get into the postseason. I think they do it here, regardless if Trevor Lawrence is playing or not. Jaguars, you get a win. Let's see what you can do in the playoffs. Then you have an AFC East matchup between the New Jersey Jets and the New England Patriots. The Jets falling to Joe Flacco and the Browns on Thursday Night Football. And their defense, which is usually so damn good, I think it's just given up at this point. And right now, the Jets, they're just trying to find their next scapegoat to blame for a really bad season.
Not really. I blame the government.
And I don't blame them. Jets fans, I feel for you because Aaron Rodgers hurt 4 plays into the freaking frackin' season, and now you've been stuck with this all year. And while you see backup quarterbacks doing well in other places, you had Zach Wilson, and yeah, that's frustrating to say the least. They're taking on the Patriots, who have also had a god-awful season. It has just been rough. Bill Belichick, of course, there's rumors about him potentially leaving. I don't think that will be the case because right now they're sitting pretty as a top 3 draft pick, and I imagine their draft position is not going to get much worse after this week because I have the Jets getting the win. I could see the Patriots potentially pulling it off, but I think the Jets defense should do enough to contain whatever the heck the Patriots offense is. So I got the Jets getting the win and finalizing their season of horror. And Patriots fans, just look forward to April. Then you have an NFC South matchup between the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints. Both these teams, yeah, it's been a couple seasons, and both these coaches, both Dennis Allen and Arthur Smith, I think they're going to be fighting for their jobs on Sunday. But the Falcons just did not look good against the Chicago Bears. And the Falcons, they had a chance to win the division. It was in their hands. And it just seems that the inconsistent play calling is really starting to hurt them. Arthur Smith is under a ton of fire. Desmond Ridder, of course, is not the answer, and that's why you have Heineke in there. But yeah, the Falcons, it's a mess. And meanwhile, the Saints, they could still win the division. If they win and the Buccaneers lose, they could pull this off. And I am going to pick the Saints to win this game. I think they're fighting for just a bit more, and I think they're a better team than the Falcons. And I know both these teams absolutely despise one another, and they want to ruin their last weeks. But I am going to go with New Orleans here to get the win, keeping their playoff hopes alive. And they're just going to have to count on the Panthers to get their job done. Then another NFC South matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers. Both these teams having rough games last week as the Buccaneers, they lost to the Saints. The Panthers, after doing so well against Joe Barry and the Packers defense, they got shut out. And here, the Buccaneers, all they need to do is win and they clinch the division. While the Panthers...
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
You.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
It's shit.
I am just so sorry. Baker Mayfield was held out of practice today with a rib injury, so there is a possibility that Kyle Trask suits up under center. However, I think the Buccaneers are still obviously the better team here. And I know it's a divisional game, so you never know what could happen. But the Panthers, I mean, they just have not been good this year. The offensive line is not good. Bryce Young has looked good a few times, especially against the Packers. But overall, it's been a very disappointing season, and they don't have a first-round pick. It would have been the first overall pick if they didn't trade for Bryce Young. But right now, I have to roll with the Buccaneers because I just think they're the better football team. I know they had a rough week against the Saints, but with this win, they will clinch the division and they will have a home game in the wild card round. And from there, let's see if Baker can conjure a little bit of magic. Then you got the Chicago Bears taking on the Green Bay mother-loving Packers. The Bears, they've been looking good these past few weeks. Justin Fields marching into Lambeau with an actual competent defense.
My powers have doubled since the last time we met, Count.
Good. Twice the pride, double the fall.
It's going to be difficult. Taking on the Packers, who smoked the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football. Jordan Love has been playing incredible football this last month. Of course, he struggled with the Giants, but then came back at the end and looked really good. And since then, he has just been marvelous. And for the Packers, this is a huge game because, of course, week one, you had all the talk from Bears fans in the offseason, and we didn't know as Packers fans how Jordan Love was going to look. And then the Packers took care of business. And now, this is a different Bears team from week one. Their defense has gotten much better. Montez Sweat is looking good. And Justin Fields, hell, did you see him last week against the Falcons? Dynamic as ever. So it is going to be a challenge for the Packers. The Packers, of course, playing for a playoff spot. They win and they're in. It's as simple as that. And this being played at Lambeau Field, Matt LaFleur has never lost to the Chicago Bears, and I'm hoping he doesn't start now. I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers to get the win. Jair Alexander should be back, so he should be able to cover DJ Moore, and hopefully some of our receivers are back as well. And because of that, I got the Pack winning and punching their ticket to the playoffs. Then you got an AFC West showdown between the Denver Broncos and the Vegas Raiders. The Broncos, they got a win. They defeated the LA Chargers on Sunday in a really, really boring game. And Sean Payton, I can only imagine what he said to Stidham after that.
You're it until you're dead, or till I find somebody better.
Thank you, sir.
He basically looked the same as Russell Wilson. But legitimately, for the Broncos, this has been such a disappointing season, just like last year was. And they just need to figure out what they're going to do in the draft because they're not going to have a very high draft pick, but they need some help. Meanwhile, they're taking on the Raiders. And while the Raiders, they've had an up and down season, I think we can all agree that they should be keeping Pierce. They seem to have found their head coach, and they just need a quarterback. That offense needs to get better, but that defense has sneakily become one of the best units in the NFL. And this, for the last game, I got the Raiders getting the big-time win. The Broncos are a mess right now, and I know they were able to beat Easton Stick and the Chargers, and they definitely could win this game, but I got the Raiders capitalizing and defeating them to end their season. And overall, it's probably not going to be a great game, but the autumn wind is a Raider. Raiders win. Following that, you have an NFC East battle between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New Jersey Giants. The Eagles, it is beyond panic time in Philadelphia. And listen, perspective, you're in the playoffs. That's all that matters. You're in the postseason, so got to be happy with that. You made it to the dance. Who knows what's going to happen after that? But last week, Eagles fans are fed up with Nick Sirianni after allowing 35 points scored on him by their former defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon.
I knew you two were in this together.
But the Eagles are just limping into the postseason right now. Not only did they lose to the Cardinals, they almost lost to the Giants the week before. They were on a losing streak before that. And now they're playing the Giants at MetLife. And the Giants, they just went toe-to-toe with the Rams. And I gotta be honest, everything about this game is screaming to pick the Giants. The Eagles don't look good. They have no momentum. And while the Giants have had a very disappointing season, they're playing pretty good football right now. Tyrod Taylor, he's looking pretty solid. And so because of that, I originally had the Eagles, but I just convinced myself mid-sentence, I'm going with the New Jersey Giants, which means that the Eagles are probably going to win because I can't have nice things. But legitimately, Eagles fans, you better hope that you're able to pull something out of thin air for these playoffs. But you're there, so count your blessings, and we'll see what you can do once you get into the postseason. Then an NFC West battle between the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. The Seahawks, unfortunately, losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. If you're a Steelers fan, if you're a Packers fan, you were very, very happy. And now the Seahawks do not have control over their own destiny. They're going to need the Bears to beat the Packers, and the Seahawks, they're going to have to beat the Cardinals team. And the Cardinals, look at them. They defeated the Philadelphia Eagles last week, and James Conner looking great. And listen, the Cardinals are not a good football team this year, but they beat the Cowboys, they beat the Eagles, so they're making a bad year look good.
Thank you all. Thank you. That wasn't flying. That was falling with style.
And in this game, I don't think the Cardinals are going to go gently into the offseason. I think they're going to be playing the Seahawks pretty darn tough. The Seahawks, they should win this game, and they need to keep their slim playoff hopes alive. And while James Conner did impress me last week, I am going to go with the Seahawks to get the win here. I think that they're just a better overall team. And while, of course, their offense hasn't looked the greatest and their defense wasn't able to stop Mason Rudolph and the Steelers' offense last week, I am going to go with Seattle to get the win here. And maybe, just maybe, they'll make the postseason. But please, God, no, because I need my Packers to go. Then you got an AFC West matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the LA Chargers. The Chiefs, they went the long way around this year, but for the 8th time in a row, they have clinched the AFC West, defeating the Cincinnati Bengals. Isaiah Pacheco, welcome back. They have needed him. Rashee Rice having a big game against Cincinnati. And the Chiefs, they made it to the dance, just like the Eagles. That is all that matters. From there, we'll see what they can do with it. They're taking on the Chargers, who lost to the Broncos last week. And Chargers fans, I'm sure you just want the season to end now instead of losing to the Chiefs again.
Leave me here. Just leave me. Go back to your messed up world and just leave me to mine.
So you're just gonna give up?
Yes.
It's been a rough year, but I will say some positives. Brandon Staley got fired. You should get a nice new head coach next year. Justin Herbert will be healthy. And then from there, you're going to have to figure it out. And even though Kansas City will be resting a bunch of their starters, I still think they're the better overall team. The Chargers really don't have anything to play for except for making the Chiefs' lives miserable. But ultimately, I am going to go with Kansas City to get the win. Then you got some seeding implications here for the playoffs. You got the Rams taking on the 49ers. The Rams able to escape with a win against the New Jersey Giants last week, and it was close. Mason Crosby unfortunately missing what could have been a game winner, and the Rams were able to escape and punch their ticket to the postseason. And the Rams are one of those dark horse sneaky teams, and they are currently holding the 6th seed, but it was just announced today that Carson Wentz will be getting the start, so it looks like Sean McVay is prioritizing a healthy Matthew Stafford and company over possibly dropping down to the 7th seed. They're taking on the number 1 seeded San Francisco 49ers, and listen, they clinched the 1st seed, so what can they do now?
I want to say sit on it.
Yes!
They could sit on that lead and sit their starters. Christian McCaffrey is definitely going to be sitting this Sunday, and it makes all the sense in the world. The 49ers are the best team in the NFC, and while they did get their ass kicked by the Ravens, getting home field throughout the playoffs is a huge advantage for the 49ers, and now they are only 2 games away from heading to the Super Bowl. Either way, I imagine there will be more starters for the Rams than there will be for the 49ers, and because of that, I'm still sticking with the Rams to get the W and lock up the 6th seed. So I'm going to go with LA to get the win. 49ers, we'll see you in the divisional round. Then you have an NFC East matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Commanders. The Cowboys, some bad officiating all the way around in Dallas, but able to get the win against the Lions on Saturday night. Though, I do wonder why Mike McCarthy was throwing on 2nd down when there was under 2 minutes left in the game.
I don't know. I never counted. I am not really a math guy, you know?
Yeah, that's classic Mike McCarthy play calling. But more importantly, they were able to get the win. They also can win the division with a win over the Commanders this week, which I imagine they are going to do, because the Commanders, man, they just cannot wait for the draft. They're going to get a new head coach. There's going to be a complete overhaul, I think, of that team, and it cannot come any sooner. The Commanders, they're able to hold their own against the 49ers for at least a little bit, so they can hang their hat on that. But I imagine you're going to have a new QB next year, as well as a plethora of other new things. And here, I have the Cowboys getting the win, securing their spot in the East as the winner. And we'll see what the Dallas Cowboys can do once they make it to the postseason. And finally, the final Sunday night football game of the regular season. You got the Buffalo Bills taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Bills, somehow, some way, after losing to the Jets week 1, after losing to the Patriots, after losing to the Broncos, have found themselves in position to win the division.
Because it's all part of the plan.
It's been a bumpy road, but the Bills, they're playing pretty darn good football. Of course, it's been a little bit close these past couple weeks, a little bit too close for comfort if you ask me. A rough start against the Patriots, but then again, the Patriots had an even worse start against them. And unfortunately, Josh Allen is a bit injured right now, but not going to get any sympathy from the Dolphins because they are banged up. Chubb out. Xavier Howard, he's gotten banged up. And right now, there are some issues with Miami. Of course, they already clinched a playoff spot, so at least they can hang their hat on that. And these two teams might meet once again in the postseason. The Bills, they could clinch the number 2 seed, or they could be out of the playoffs entirely. So a lot is riding on this game. It's also being played in Miami, which I think gives a really nice advantage to the Dolphins. However, because the Dolphins are so banged up, I am going to give it to the Bills. I know Allen is dealing with a stinger right now, but you know he's going to be playing, and he's going to be playing with a lot of fury on Sunday night. I am going to go with the Bills to get the big win here, clinching the AFC East and punching their ticket to the postseason. And from there, we'll see if they go all the way this time. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Who do you have winning or losing these games? It should be a very exciting Week 18, and damn, the postseason's around the corner, and I can't frickin' wait. You can always find me at Tom Grossi Comedy, all social media see down below. A big shout and thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members for supporting this channel. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.